Your MacBook can either be a powerful tool that transforms your work output or a major distraction that tricks you into procrastination. But a question I always had was, how can I maximize the productivity benefits I get from my MacBook while eliminating the digital chaos that destroys my focus? And in this video, I'll be transforming my MacBook into the ultimate productivity machine. Now, there's two specific questions I'm hoping to answer. First, what apps should I actually keep versus delete? And second, how can I set up my MacBook to maximize deep work while minimizing distractions? You see, the way the average entrepreneur uses their MacBook is pretty bad for your productivity. The reason for that is because your MacBook doesn't allow your brain to get into the optimal brainwave activity for peak focus. Your brain has to go through a gear shifting process to reach peak performance. When you first sit down to work, your brain is operating in what's called alpha waves. This is your relaxed, unfocused state. To get into deep focused work, your brain needs to shift into beta waves, which is where real productivity happens. But the problem is that this transition takes 10 to 15 minutes of completely uninterrupted focus. Think of it like a plane taking off. For those first 10 to 15 minutes, your brain is building momentum, gathering speed on the runway. And any interruption during this critical window forces your brain to start the entire process from the beginning. Most entrepreneurs never experience true peak focus because they're constantly hitting the reset button on this 15-minute timer without even realizing it. Research at UC Irvine discovered that the average knowledge worker switches tasks every 3 minutes. But even worse, that it can take up to 23 minutes on average to fully return to the original task. This means that if you're working 8 hours a day, you're easily wasting over 2.5 hours just trying to get refocused instead of actually getting shit done. That's why we'll first go through the peak focus setup to ensure that all the time you spend in front of your MacBook, you're hyper-focused on the work that matters instead of frying your brain with pointless distractions every few minutes. The first and probably the most important setting is the focus mode. What this does is that it blocks all notifications, calls, and messages when you have it enabled, allowing you to focus on one thing for a set period without annoying pings from random apps. But just the focus setting alone is pretty basic and not really useful if you don't customize it based on what kind of work you're doing. For example, if you're doing deep work and need to dial in on one super specific task with zero distractions whatsoever, then what I would do is I would click on add focus, then you want to click on custom, then you name it deep work, then block the notifications from all the apps that don't matter based on your deep work. For your admin work, create another custom focus mode that only allows relevant notifications from your work that is considered admin work. For example, for me that is WhatsApp, Slack, and Todoist, since these are the three main apps I use to manage tasks for my clients and speak with my team when it's time to do admin work. And also, let's not forget emergencies. Blocking all calls and notifications when trying to focus works, but if you have family and obligations, sometimes that doesn't work. So what I do here is I go to my custom focus modes and only allow specific people to call me when I'm in deep work mode. It's important to communicate your sacred deep work hours with these people so that they know to only call you during this time if it's a true emergency. But the most important setting that can literally decide how effective each one of your deep work sessions will be is scheduling them. You see, your brain isn't ready to jump into peak flow state mode all the time because it follows the algorithm that is controlled by your circadian clock. When you wake up in the morning, your alertness and energy chemicals like cortisol, adrenaline, and dopamine will be at their highest, and later in the evening, they will be low, allowing you to start preparing to enter sleep mode. A lot of people think that they're night owls and do their most mentally demanding work at night, but it's a stupid idea. These people will tell you that they're most productive at night and they get done most of their stuff then, but that's not because they're night owls. It's mostly because everyone else that distracts them is sleeping during this time and they're on their own. And that's why we set up our focus modes so that we can strategically leverage our brain's prime focus time for mentally demanding work. But what you also need to do here is to schedule your focus modes to automatically occur every morning during your brain's optimal performance hours, which are typically the first 5 to 8 hours of the day, and then schedule your admin work hours for later in the evening. This will make it easier for you to not get distracted, and it will ease the path for you to enter flow state when you truly need to get stuff done. But another problem many people face here is that while you might have your MacBook settings fully optimized, you can always reach for your phone to check your notifications there, which pretty much cancels all of what you've done so far. So it's important that you enable the setting share across devices, if you have an iPhone of course, so that when it's deep work time, your phone also switches into the focus mode so that you can be completely protected from all of the digital distractions. But even with the perfect focus modes, there is still one massive problem that's sabotaging your productivity without you even knowing it. You think you're working for 8 hours, but you might be only getting about 3 to 4 hours of actual focused work done. The rest is lost to what I call productivity theater, looking busy without actually being productive. Most people are completely delusional about how productive they really are. They'll tell you they worked for 8 hours, but when you actually track what they did, it's maybe 3 hours of real work mixed with 5 hours of email checking, random browsing, and context switching. That's where this app Rise comes in. It's an AI-powered time tracking app that runs silently in the background and shows you exactly where each minute goes. The best part is that it doesn't just track time, it tracks your focus score. It can tell the difference between productive work and mindless browsing. You'll be able to see where you're spending most of your time and what low ROI tasks you're spending your time on that you can actually delegate so you can focus on the things that matter most. But tracking your time is useless unless you know exactly what to do with that time. Which brings us to the second tool that completely transformed how I work. You see, I've worked with hundreds of knowledge workers, entrepreneurs, and Fortune 500 executives to help them with their performance. And one of the most common mistakes I've seen, which you're probably also doing yourself, is the chaotic task management. Sticky notes everywhere, random thoughts scattered across different apps, and that constant anxiety of forgetting something important. The problem isn't that you don't have a to-do list. The problem is that your brain is trying to be your to-do list, and your brain sucks at that job. Your brain is designed for processing and creating, not for storing and remembering. Every time you try to remember a task, you're using precious mental energy that should be going toward actual work. And every unfinished task in your mind creates a cognitive load that drains your focus and creativity. That's why I use Todoist as my external brain. Every task, every idea, every commitment goes into Todoist with a specific project, priority level, and due date. So let's say, for example, I might be working on planning content or researching something and I'm in deep work mode, but an idea comes up. What I'll do is I'll hit Control Q and dump that idea down immediately. I don't think about it, I don't organize it, I don't prioritize it in the moment. I just dump it out of my brain and into Todoist and then immediately return to my focused work. This takes literally 5 seconds, doesn't break my focus, and frees up that mental real estate so my brain can operate at full capacity on the task at hand. But even with perfect task management, there is still one thing that can destroy your entire day in seconds. How many times today did you open a new tab just to check something quickly and end up down a rabbit hole for 30 minutes? You know what I'm talking about. When you want to write a Google Doc, for example, and as you're trying to focus, you find yourself ending up on WhatsApp, Slack, Gmail, etc., and you end up doing 50 unrelated tasks. And so now the task that should have taken you 1 hour to complete now takes about 3 hours. You see, your brain is literally wired against you. Social media companies have teams of neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists whose only job is to make their platforms as addictive as possible. They use variable reward schedules, which is the same psychological principle that makes gambling addictive. Every time you check social media, you might get a dopamine hit from a like, a comment, or an interesting post, or you might not. This uncertainty is what keeps you coming back for more. Freedom.to is like having a personal bodyguard for your attention. It blocks distracting websites and apps during your focus sessions. Once you've downloaded the app, go to the website, click on Add Block List, name your block list, and then select your blocked apps and websites, and then click on Create Block List. Then once you're ready to start a focus session, you want to go to the top right, select your block list, and start a session. But if you're like me, sometimes you might need to use social media or distracting websites for work. For example, YouTube to research certain topics, or Instagram to post a story. So in that case, you need to install either Undistracted or Social Focus. Picture this. You open YouTube to come up with an idea for a new video. And as you open YouTube, you see all of these different interesting ideas, and you're like, oh, let me see what happened in this video. It's only 3 minutes. And before you know it, you've watched 4 videos and wasted 40 minutes just like that. It's not your fault. It's just your brain trying to get the dopamine it craves for simply because your work is boring and you have to put the effort in before you get rewarded. So by implementing this setting, you'll be able to use YouTube or Twitter or Instagram for focused work without getting distracted like a small child. Now that we've eliminated the distractions and optimized our focus management, there is one more layer that can 10x your productivity, and it's something most people never even think about. about. Your physical and digital environment is constantly sending signals to your brain, and most of these signals are telling your brain to be distracted, overwhelmed, and unfocused. You see, your brain has limited cognitive resources. Every choice you have to make, even tiny ones like which app should I click, depletes your mental energy throughout the day. This is called decision fatigue, and it's why successful people like Steve Jobs wear the same outfit every day to eliminate unnecessary decisions and preserve mental energy for what matters. That's why you need to set up something called declutter mode. And the first place you need to start is your dock, because it's probably a mess right now that is interfering with your brain's intimate focus and reward mechanisms and silently slows down your focus even if you don't consciously think about it. Every app icon in your dock is competing for your attention. Your brain has to subconsciously process every single one, which drains your mental energy. Instead, I only have my web browser in my dock and everything else is hidden and accessed through Spotlight search or Command and Space. This drastically reduces visual clutter and eliminates decision fatigue. But if your desktop looks like a digital tornado hit it, files everywhere, screenshots scattered around, downloads you forgot about from 6 months ago, your stress levels are increasing and your focus decreases automatically, and you probably don't even know why. You see, a cluttered desktop literally increases cortisol levels and reduces your ability to focus. Researchers at UCLA wanted to see how the environment we work from or live in affects our stress levels and mental health. And after conducting studies on this, they saw that people who perceive their homes or workspaces as cluttered have continuously elevated cortisol levels throughout the day. This happens because your brain interprets visual clutter as unfinished business, which creates a constant low-level stress response that drains your mental energy. Here's my desktop system. My desktop is completely empty except for one folder called Desktop Inbox. All downloads, screenshots, and random files automatically go into Desktop Inbox. Every Friday, I spend about 10 minutes sorting my desktop inbox into proper folders like content, client work, accounting, etc. And then I also use Stacks, which is essentially right-click and then use Stacks to automatically organize files by type when they do appear. This helps your brain stay calm and focused instead of constantly processing visual noise. But what if I told you that there are tools you can use with your MacBook that change your brain's neurochemistry to unlock peak productivity? I call them neuropriming tools. Most people think that productivity is just about apps and organization, but the highest performers understand that true productivity starts with optimizing your brain's hardware, not just the software. You can set up your productivity settings and block distractions, but whether you actually feel focused and creative or tired and groggy all comes down to what chemicals your brain sends at each part of the day. What most people don't realize is that the light from your MacBook screen is hijacking your circadian rhythm and destroying your productivity the next day. Blue light from your screen suppresses melatonin production and disrupts your circadian rhythm, which controls the release of cortisol, dopamine, and other neurochemicals that determine your focus and energy levels throughout the day. When your circadian rhythm is out of sync, you get what researchers call social jet lag, which means that even if you sleep 8 hours, you wake up feeling groggy and unfocused because your brain chemistry is completely off. In a study of young athletes, researchers found that exposure to blue light after 9 p.m. didn't just mess with their sleep, it actually tanked their mental sharpness and reaction times the next day. As a result, their attention dropped and they performed sloppy, all because of a few hours of normal light at night. I set up automatic night shift that gradually reduces blue light starting 3 hours before bedtime. So you want to go to your settings, click displays, you want to click night shift, and then you want to schedule it. You want to schedule it to start from about 3 hours from when you go to bed and then gradually warm up the colors. But also on top of that, I reduce my screen's brightness to 50% during the evening hours to signal to my brain that it's time to start winding down and preparing for recovery. This allows you to maintain consistent energy levels and cognitive performance day after day instead of riding the roller coaster of afternoon brain fog and evening crashes. But the real productivity hacks happen before you even start working, and it's based on a scientific discovery about when your brain produces the most focus-enhancing neurochemicals. One thing that we saw earlier is that your brain operates on different levels of focus at different parts of the day. Earlier in the day when you wake up, and for the first 5 to 8 hours, your brain is in prime problem-solving and peak focus mode. And later in the day, you'll naturally start feeling more fatigued. And while we've already scheduled the deep work and admin work custom focus modes, it's also important to physically block your calendar, because if you take client calls, team calls, or sales sales calls. Even if you schedule the deep work hours from your MacBook settings, someone could still book in your calendar, taking you completely out of your focus. You want to open your calendar, create a new event called deep work, do not schedule or something relevant, and set it to repeat daily from your wake time to about 5 or 8 hours later. And most importantly, you want to mark this as busy so others can't really schedule over it. I obsess about this because I saw that the world's most productive and successful entrepreneurs treat these hours as sacred because they understand that they need to spend their brain juice at the things that make the biggest impact in their business instead of admin low ROI work. And there's one final element that can literally hack your brain's neurochemistry to trigger focus mode on command using nothing but sound. You see, working in silence is very powerful for focus, but there are specific types of sound that have been engineered by psychologists to keep your brain engaged, focused, and alert into what you're doing. For this exact reason, game and movie franchises spend millions of dollars on the music they're using to keep the player or viewer so focused that they don't want to stop playing or watching. I've created a focus playlist full of these types of songs I personally use when doing focused work that helps me stay laser focused and get lost in my work. You want to go to Spotify, click on browse, you want to type pure focus, then select playlists, and this is the playlist. Just make sure to save it. And now that you know how to optimize your MacBook, you need to take the next step and optimize your life. And there's a strategy I've started doing recently that has allowed me to get all of my work done in 4 hours per day. More work than most people do in 12 hours. So watch this video next where I show you what it is, how it works, and how you can use it to get more work done in less time.